There are many things we learn at school: math, history, science, but what if I told you there are also many creepy secrets hidden behind those classroom walls? From strange rules to ghost stories, these school mysteries will shock you. So make sure to like and subscribe if you love games and creepy stories. Schools are supposed to be safe places, but sometimes what happens inside them is anything but normal. One story tells of a boy who had just moved from Nigeria trying to adjust to a new environment. Everything seemed fine until the day a fire alarm was pulled as a prank. That single sound triggered something far darker than anyone expected. Now watch the curse.
The most disturbing things that have happened in schools. So this school had someone who just came from Nigeria, and one day some kid pulled the fire alarm as a joke. After the count, they noticed the Nigerian kid wasn't outside, so they started looking for him all over the school. Eventually they called the police, but even 2 hours later they still couldn't find him. Towards the end of the day, someone heard whimpering out of a very small space behind the vending machine. So one of the teachers tried to pull him out, but he just kept pushing her hand away. Eventually they talked him into stepping out, and he was taken to the principal's office. It turns out the fire alarm was the exact same sound as the one they used to alert his community of an incoming gang attack. And these are...
What struck me most is how an ordinary sound carried so much hidden trauma. For the other students, it was just noise, but for him, it was the exact warning used back home for incoming gang attacks. Hiding behind the vending machine, refusing to come out, it wasn't fear of school rules, it was survival instinct. That kind of detail makes this story linger, because it shows how real horror doesn't always come from ghosts or monsters. This was a reminder that trauma can turn the ordinary into something terrifying. The next story shows how fear can twist even the most familiar places. School ghost. Late at night, schools are supposed to be empty, just quiet halls and locked doors. But one employee working alone began to notice something strange. The security camera in the front lobby started moving by itself, shifting angles as if following something unseen. What should have been an ordinary night shift turned into evidence of something paranormal caught on tape. Here comes the horror.
Alright, y'all, so I gotta show you this real quick, okay? So, I work at an elementary school, right? And I was working here by myself last night, okay? By myself, okay? These down here, okay, this is a camera, okay, in the front lobby. You enter here, you go into the office here, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but these down here, these are timestamps of when things happen in the building, right? So this one right here is when I left. That's when I left, okay? You can even see me dipping out. Deuces, I'm out. Have a nice day. Anyway, but that's when I left, okay? Who are you? What is this? What happened there? So when I saw that, right, I clicked on it just to see exactly what happened at that point, because look, I'm gone. Deuces. So let me just show you what I saw. Okay? Let's just play this, okay? And just watch. I don't know if y'all saw that, but the camera fucking moved. Okay? It fucking moved. Who is moving my camera? Like for real. I'm gonna try and hold my phone as steady as I can so you can see it. But like, who? Like who? And this camera right here is not one that you can just reach up and touch. It's up in the ceiling. Who is messing with my camera?
The unnerving part is that the camera isn't something you can just reach up and move. It's fixed high on the ceiling. Watching it shift angles with no one around makes the footage feel less like a malfunction and more like a presence. The fact that it happened while he was completely alone only adds to the weight of the moment. To me, that's what makes this clip linger. It feels like the building itself was alive. One haunted camera is unsettling enough. The next legend captures fear in a way that no footage could explain. Nigerian jokes. Everyday sounds inside a school are supposed to mean routine. The bell, the chatter, even the fire alarm. But for one boy who had just moved from Nigeria, that sound meant something else entirely. When a classmate pulled the alarm as a prank, he vanished. Hours later, they finally found him hiding in a cramped space behind a vending machine, terrified. Let's face the truth.
Most disturbing things that have happened in schools.
So this school had someone who just came from Nigeria, and one day some kid pulled the fire alarm as a joke. After the count, they noticed the Nigerian kid wasn't outside, so they started looking for him all over the school. Eventually, they called the police, but even 2 hours later, they still couldn't find him. Towards the end of the day, someone heard whimpering out of a very small space behind the vending machine. So one of the teachers tried to pull him out, but he just kept pushing her hand away. Eventually, they talked him into stepping out, and he was taken to the principal's office. It turns out the fire alarm was the exact same sound as the one they used to alert his community of an incoming gang attack.
The detail that stays with me is how the alarm meant survival for him, not safety. In his community, that same sound warned of gang attacks, and hearing it again must have felt like reliving a nightmare. What unsettles me most is how no one else understood his reaction until much later. It's a reminder that the scariest stories in schools don't come from ghosts, but from trauma that follows you into the classroom. This story shows how past horrors can echo in unexpected places. The next legend shows how fear can be born from something entirely new, ghostly encounter in Japan. Japanese schools are often linked to ghost stories, and bathrooms seem to be the center of many of them. One night, a group of students decided to film themselves exploring the stalls of a restroom. At first, it was just nervous laughter and faint noises echoing in the dark. But when they pushed open the final stall, the game turned into pure terror. Now see what happened.
Japan is known for some of the most chilling and haunting urban legends, and this story is no exception. A group of young Japanese students found themselves caught in an eerie situation when they ventured into a restroom. As they explored the stalls, strange noises began to echo from one of them, sending chills down their spines. One of the students, filled with curiosity but clearly scared, decided to stand on the toilet in the adjacent stall to peek into the one that was causing all the unease. What happened next made them all scream and flee, but the camera kept rolling. After gathering their courage, they decided to open the mysterious stall. The girl holding the camera cautiously approached, pointing the lens inside. At first it seemed empty, but then as the camera panned back, there it was. A pale-faced girl lurking in the corner of the stall, her presence so sudden and unnerving that it sent the students running for their lives. Who could this girl have been? Could it be one of Japan's many ghostly legends, like Hanako-san, the spirit of a young girl rumored to haunt school bathrooms? Or was this some real-life person caught on camera?
What makes this footage chilling isn't the scream, it's the pale face lingering in the stall, almost waiting. The reaction of the girls feels raw and real, not staged, which only heightens the unease. I can almost feel the panic of realizing something was inside the stall the whole time. It's the kind of image that stays burned into your mind long after the video ends. This bathroom encounter left behind fear caught on tape. The next legend leaves behind fear that no camera can capture. Shizuoka Girl. In 1953, at Shizuoka Girls' High School in Japan, a girl named Sayuri Takahashi was relentlessly bullied. Born with a slightly longer neck, she became the target of cruel jokes, her classmates tying bells around her so they could laugh as she walked by. One autumn night, after being locked inside a storage room as a prank, a fire broke out. Everyone escaped except Sayuri, who was left behind. Now see the cursed.
Did you know Shizuoka Girls' High School in Japan is haunted by this girl? In 1953, in the quiet town of Shizuoka, Japan, there was a 19-year-old student named Sayuri Takahashi. Sayuri was born with a slightly longer neck than normal. Students whispered behind her back. One day, a group of classmates tied tiny bells around her neck so they could hear her coming and laugh. Sayuri never fought back. She believed if she stayed kind, they would stop, but they didn't. During the school's autumn festival, she offered to stay late and clean. That night, a group of students locked her in a storage room as a prank. Then, a fire broke out in the building. Everyone escaped, except Sayuri, trapped and forgotten. She was never seen again. After the fire, strange things started happening. People heard bells jingling down empty hallways. Some students went missing. The school eventually closed that section of the building. Locals now call her the Bell Neck Woman. They say her neck kept growing after death, stretched by sorrow and rage.
The part that lingers with me is how sorrow turned into legend. Sayuri wasn't just a ghost story. She was a victim whose pain never ended, even in death. The image of her neck stretching unnaturally long, carrying bells that jingle in the dark, feels both tragic and terrifying. It's one of those tales that makes you feel pity and fear at the same time. The Bell Neck Woman embodies grief turned into horror. The next legend shows how terror can be born not from sorrow but from rage. Columbine High School shooting. Tuesday morning, April 20th, 1999. Columbine High School opened its doors like any other day, with laughter in the halls and students rushing to lunch. In the parking lot, two seniors arrived. Eric Harris in his gray Civic, Dylan Klebold in his black BMW. What looked like an ordinary morning was in fact the start of one of the darkest chapters in modern history. Let's roll the terror.
It's Tuesday, April 20th, 1999 at Columbine High School, which is just outside of Littleton, Colorado. Two students, seniors Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, were noticeably absent from class that morning. At 11:10 a.m., Harris drives his 1986 gray Honda Civic on the school property, parks in the junior parking lot, and waits. Moments later, Dylan Klebold arrives in his 1982 black BMW and parks. A few minutes later, the pair walk into school carrying two large duffel bags, which contained homemade propane bombs. They walk into the cafeteria, place the duffel bags between two lunch tables, and go back to their cars. Seconds later, the cafeteria is flooded with 400 students ready to eat lunch. At the time, it was customary for students to leave their book bags exactly where the duffel bags were so they all blended together. Talking with their friends, complaining about not finishing homework, and still catching up on weekend news, the students were completely unaware that two propane bombs were inches from them. The bombs were set to timers that were supposed to go off at 11:17 a.m. Once the timer went off, a small tank of gasoline was supposed to heat up the 20-pound propane tank, which would cause so much pressure that the tanks would explode. Harris and Klebold had gone back to their vehicles to wait on the bombs to...
What chills me isn't just the act itself, it's the silence before it happened. Hundreds of teenagers eating, laughing, completely unaware of the countdown ticking nearby. The normalcy of those final moments feels heavier than any image of violence. It's as if the school was holding its breath before everything shattered. Columbine ended the illusion that schools were untouchable. The next case reveals how fear doesn't wait for a safe place to strike. Amanda Todd. Amanda Todd was just 15 years old when her story became one of the most tragic reminders of the dangers of the internet. It began when an online predator tricked her into sharing a private image. What followed was years of harassment, blackmail, and bullying that followed her from school to school. Despite her attempts to start over, the abuse never stopped. Time to see it.
Did you know that just 1 month after this video was published, this girl unalived herself, and I'm sure if you're a millennial, you'll remember it. When Amanda Todd was in the 7th grade, she was playing around on the internet, as we all did back then, and she discovered video chats. Then one day, Amanda met a stranger on a webcam who convinced her to show her breasts. A whole year passed, and then Amanda gets a message on Facebook from somebody she didn't know. They asked Amanda to put on a show, and if she didn't do it, they were going to send a photo of her breasts around. Amanda refused, hoping that this person was bluffing. However, this person wasn't bluffing. Police informed Amanda that her photo had been circulating the internet. After this, Amanda suffered with mental illnesses due to being exploited online. Amanda's family then moved to a whole new area in hopes of a fresh start for her. 1 whole year passes and Amanda feels like she's left her blackmailer behind, but then he messages her on Facebook. He sets his profile picture to the one of Amanda's breasts, and then he starts messaging all her classmates. It wasn't long before word got around the whole school and Amanda found herself being bullied again. She would sit alone at lunchtime. Amanda moved schools again, and it wasn't long before she ran into issues at this school. She met a boy who pretended to really like her, and so Amanda slept with him. But this boy had a girlfriend, and then the next week, this girlfriend, as well as 15 others, including the boy, rocked up to Amanda's school. The girl threw Amanda to the ground and started beating her, and everybody just watched and filmed it. And then her dad later came to the school and found Amanda in a ditch. When her dad brought her home, Amanda attempted to unalive herself by drinking bleach. Amanda was rushed to hospital and had her stomach pumped, and she survived. However, when she got home, she had all these Facebook messages saying that they wished that she hadn't and that she deserved it. After this, Amanda moved away again, but the abusive messages continued to come for months via social media. Amanda's mental state worsened, she was on antidepressants, started counseling, and she was also self-harming. On September 7th, 2012, Amanda posted a video to YouTube using index cards to tell her story about what she'd been experiencing. In just 1 month, this video surpassed 1 million views, but ultimately Amanda Todd could not fight it anymore. On October 10th, 2012, Amanda unalived herself in her family home using a noose. She was just 15 years old. The man who screenshotted Amanda's body was identified as 𝗀𝘂𝗯𝗀𝗶𝗯𝗲. He was in his 30s when he first started harassing Amanda and used over 22 aliases to hide his identity while tormenting her. He's currently in jail serving time for the harassment of Amanda as well as others.
What makes Amanda's case unforgettable is how clearly she showed the world what she was going through. The video wasn't sensational, it was raw, honest, and heartbreaking. Watching her silently hold those cards, it's impossible not to feel the weight of her struggle. More than a decade later, that video still stands as one of the most powerful reminders of the consequences of cyberbullying. Amanda Todd's story revealed how online abuse can destroy lives. The next case shows how fear can spread in an entirely different way. Backrooms classroom rules. Classrooms are supposed to feel familiar, but sometimes the room around you isn't really your school at all. There's a story that if a teacher ever calls on you with a disturbing question that makes no sense, you've already crossed over. From that moment, the world follows a set of rules. Break them and you won't make it out. This is the moment.
If you're ever in class, and the teacher picks you to answer, and the question is not only out of subject but also very, very disturbing, you're not in your class anymore. You must listen carefully. Here are the rules. 1. You will notice that all of your classmates have disturbing faces and will all start looking at you. They will smile chanting the question together. Get out of the classroom immediately when this happens, and be sure to run. They will start chasing you once you're out. 2. As you're running through the hallways, count your steps. If you take more than 27 of them without making a turn, you've entered a looting corridor. Don't fall for it. 3. Ignore any hall monitor you see. They're not real staff. If one calls your name, cover your ears immediately. It's trying to manipulate you. They will sound just like someone you trust. The exit is in the basement. You'll hear a second question whispered from the dark. Answer it correctly, or you'll never leave. Good luck.
The part that stays with me is how ordinary it all sounds at first. Just a teacher, just a question, just a hallway. But as the rules unfold, every detail becomes more nightmarish. The smiles, the chase, the looping corridor. It's horror disguised as routine, which makes it even more disturbing. It feels less like a story and more like instructions for surviving a place you hope you'll never enter. The liminal classroom twists safety into terror. The next legend twists reality itself, 𝗀𝘂𝗯𝗀𝗋𝗋 school rules. Inside every school handbook are rules meant to keep order. But sometimes the fine print reveals something so strange it feels unreal. Across different campuses, students discovered regulations that made life harder, not safer, and each one left behind stories no one forgot. Play the cursed scene.
The dumbest school rules ever. So this high school had a terrible vandalism problem. The bathrooms would be broken in various ways almost constantly. So the staff came up with a genius idea. If any bathroom was vandalized, it would be closed for the week on the first offense. It would be closed for 1 month on the second offense, and on the third offense, it would be permanently closed. They took back the rule after they closed every bathroom on day 1. Next, this middle school banned salt and pepper from being used in the cafeteria because they claimed it was too unhealthy. Yet they still sold Mountain Dew in the vending machines. Number 3, this Catholic school had percentage grades. And if you ever got 100% on a test, you'd be dinged down to 99% because only God is perfect.
Imagine needing to use the restroom only to find every door chained shut because one student misbehaved. Picture cafeteria tables stripped of salt and pepper, while vending machines still sold soda. Even grades weren't safe. One Catholic school refused to give perfect marks, no matter how flawless the work. Each of these rules shows how quickly logic can vanish once authority goes unchecked. Absurdity in schools can be funny, until it isn't. The next case shows how rules can cross the line into something truly disturbing. Hidden camera. South Korea has faced a disturbing problem for years. Hidden cameras placed in bathrooms, hotels, and even Airbnbs. These devices are so small and well disguised they can be hidden inside fire alarms, wall clocks, or tiny crevices. Victims often don't realize they've been filmed until the footage surfaces online. What should be private moments have turned into violations broadcast to strangers. See it for yourself.
There is a huge problem in South Korea that is not discussed enough among foreigners, people who are visiting South Korea. So if you are going to South Korea sometime soon, please watch this video. South Korea has a really huge problem with hidden cameras. Now, if you go into any single female bathroom, it might be the same for males, I don't know, you will find every single crevice in that bathroom plugged up with wet toilet paper. Women do this in South Korea to stop the possibility of a small hidden camera being able to film them, which in a lot of cases is usually broadcasted online for men to watch. This issue extends beyond toilets as well, so we're talking Airbnbs, hotel rooms, basically anywhere that is a private area. You run the risk of being exposed to hidden cameras. As a foreigner, what can you do? Well, I really recommend buying a hidden camera detector. You can find them on Amazon or other websites, and they help you detect hidden cameras. You find the light in the room and it'll show you, and then you can either report it or you can take it away. These hidden cameras are getting so ridiculously well disguised. You can find them hidden in fire alarm systems, clocks, alarm clocks. This can happen anywhere in the world. It's not just South Korea, but South Korea does have a very big problem with hidden cameras.
What makes this so unsettling is how ordinary the settings are, places where people should feel safe. Travelers and locals alike have had to buy hidden camera detectors just to protect themselves. The fact that bathrooms and bedrooms, spaces meant for privacy, are turned into hunting grounds is terrifying. It's not folklore, it's an ongoing reality. Hidden cameras show how technology can be twisted into a tool of harm. The next case shows fear taking shape in a very different way, the Chowchilla kidnapping. On July 15, 1976, a school bus carrying 26 children and their driver, 𝗀 was hijacked in Chowchilla, California. 3 men, hoping to demand a $5 million ransom, forced them into vans and eventually buried them inside a moving truck hidden beneath a rock quarry. For over 12 hours, the children and their driver were trapped underground with almost no food, water, or air. Their survival seemed impossible. Now the truth plays.
But they're lazy, they don't want to work. They want a get-rich-quick scheme, and that's how they came up with the idea to kidnap a school bus full of children so they could ask the state of California for a $5 million ransom for the children's safe return. And they planned this out for about a year and a half. And after they buried the 26 children and 𝗀 underground, they went back home to call the authorities and make the ransom demand. But remember, the phones are ringing off the hook with those hundreds of calls of tips and the media and concerned citizens. So their call for ransom demand could not go through. The 3 men decided that they were just going to try and call later. And in the meantime, they would take a little nap. You know, they had such a long day, but they napped so long, in fact, that 𝗀 and the 26 children had been buried underground for over 12 hours. And they were running out of air. The small amount of food and water that the kidnappers have left for them, it was gone. The chances of them even getting out of this hole alive to be given up for ransom were looking slim. It had been over 12 hours and the kidnappers never came back like they said they would, and this just shows the amount of bravery and the will to survive that these children had, because they were going to get out of here. They began stacking those mattresses that were thrown on the ground on top of each other, and then started to stand on each other's shoulders so they could reach that manhole cover 12 feet above them. The oldest of the children was a 14-year-old boy named Michael Marshall, and he was able to kind of wiggle the manhole a little bit. So 𝗀, the bus driver, he climbs up and he holds it open to him just a little bit so that Michael was able to go in and wedge a piece of wood so he's able to wiggle the manhole actually off. The kidnappers had also put a heavy wooden box on top of the manhole, so 14-year-old Michael starts bashing at the wood and tearing at it with his bare hands until 16 hours after they were first imprisoned, he sees sunlight. 14-year-old Michael has just freed them. He's so brave because he's the first one to leave the hole, and he has no idea if the kidnappers are going to be out there waiting for him. And then 𝗀 lifts each child one by one to Michael, until they're all free. All 27 of them are outside of the hole, and now they're looking around and they're in the middle of nowhere. There's just rolling California hills surrounding all of them. They're in this like mining area. They actually have been buried under a rock quarry. And there was an employee at the rock quarry that was about to go home. His shift was over, and he sees these 26 children and Ed just wandering around and realizes that they are the kidnapped children that everyone's been talking about. And when Dumb and Dumber finally wake up from their nap, they see on the news that, oh, all our kidnapping victims have been found alive. They tried to flee the country. It was actually extremely easy to identify that these men were the ones who did this because the rock quarry that they were all buried under, it belonged to Fred's father, and Fred had been seen by multiple employees digging holes at the rock quarry, and since Fred really only hung out with the Schoenfeld brothers, they were easy suspects. And their homes were just filled with evidence, including all of the kidnapped children's names just written on a fast food bag. They found a draft of the ransom letter, and then they also found a document just titled Plan that documented and described all of their plan in a lot of detail. All three men were eventually brought into custody and charged with 27 counts of kidnapping and 5 counts of kidnapping with bodily harm. A lot of the children were actually brave enough to testify and face their kidnappers, and all three men were found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But all three men were able to successfully appeal the bodily harm charges because, technically they didn't beat them or anything. But all, or at least most of the children and Ed suffered with lifelong PTSD, trauma, anxiety, on top of the fact that they almost died down in that hole and they had to fight their way out to survive. But the court system decided that they did not count as bodily harm enough. So their sentences were all reduced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, and today all men have been released on parole. Richard was released in 2012, James was released in 2015, and Fred was released pretty recently in 2022. I know you guys are gonna have a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts about this case. If you guys are still with me, thank you, because I know this was a long one. I'm gonna be reading all your guys' comments, replying to as many as I can. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions on this case. I know they'll be strong. And also while you're there, let me know what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so much. You have no idea, and I will see you tomorrow.
The image that stays with me is a line of frightened kids climbing on top of one another, scraping at the wooden roof with shaking hands. It wasn't luck that saved them. It was sheer willpower and the courage of a handful who refused to give up. That fight for survival turned a horror story into a story of resilience. Yet even in victory, the scars of those hours underground never fully healed. The Chowchilla case shows how even in the darkest pit, human strength can break through. The next story shows what happens when fear itself becomes inescapable, the Slenderman stabbing. The woods outside Waukesha, Wisconsin were silent until the sound of footsteps broke through. 3 girls, only 12 years old, walked deeper into the trees. One of them suddenly collapsed, stabbed 19 times by the other 2. She was left bleeding on the ground while her attackers whispered about proving their loyalty to Slenderman. Here's what they saw.
This 12-year-old girl was arrested after stabbing her own classmate 19 times. In 2014, 12-year-old Morgan Geyser and her friend Anissa developed an obsession with the popular video game character known as Slenderman. The 2 young girls believed that Slenderman would come for them and their families if they did not offer him a sacrifice. One day, the girls convinced their friend Peyton to hang out in the woods with them, prepared to act out their disturbing plan. The girls viciously attacked Peyton with a knife, with Morgan and Anissa taking turns stabbing her 19 times. Peyton suffered severe injuries and laid on the ground with the 2 girls towering over her. Morgan told Peyton they would leave to get her help, but the girls never returned. In a stroke of luck, a man passing by noticed Peyton's body on the ground, called police, and Peyton was rushed to the hospital. Thankfully, the doctors were able to save Peyton's life, and that's when she revealed the disturbing truth of what really happened. Police tracked down both Morgan and Anissa, and at that point the situation only got even stranger. The girls told police their story of how they truly believed Slenderman was going to hurt their families if they didn't sacrifice Peyton. During questioning, Anissa broke down and expressed remorse for what she had done to her friend. Morgan, on the other hand, displayed a completely different attitude toward her actions. Morgan showed no remorse for what she had done, stood firmly on her beliefs, and told police she did not regret attacking Peyton whatsoever. Following their trial, both girls were found not guilty by reason of mental illness and were instead sentenced to a minimum of 25 years in a mental institution. After 7 years of treatment, Anissa was granted early release after a judge ruled her to no longer be a threat to the public. 4 years later, in 2025, Morgan was also granted early dismissal and is set to be released sometime in the next coming weeks. Do you think the girls are truly no longer a threat to the public? Leave your opinion in the comments down below.
The disturbing element lies in the attacker's conviction. At 12, they treated a creepypasta character as a living threat, fully believing violence would grant them protection. This wasn't a case of misunderstanding, it was intent fueled by delusion. That clarity of purpose in children so young is what makes this file deeply unsettling. Case closed in court, but the shadow of Slenderman lingers. The next file documents another story where belief turned deadly. The van that never came back. Parents waved goodbye as the school van left that morning, but their children never came home. By nightfall, panic spread through the town. When the van was finally discovered, it was still running, doors wide open, and not a single passenger inside. Only silence, broken by the hum of the engine. Don't look away now.
7:30 a.m., 11 kids got into their school van, and they never came back. This is a true story. It happened in Mexico, 2017. The van drove off like it always did. Nothing seemed unusual until the van didn't return. Parents waited. They thought it was traffic, or maybe a delay. But then the school called. Van never showed up. Not a single child was marked present. Every phone was off. Police began searching. At 11:42 a.m., they found it. A yellow school van, parked on a foggy back road. Engine still running. Doors wide open. But inside, no driver, no kids, no backpacks. Just one thing left behind. A torn teddy bear inside Amanda Delgado's school bag. The windows were scratched. From the inside, over and over. The same word. Help! There was no sign of struggle. No blood. No damage. Salim's record was clean. His family was confused. Terrified. No ransom call. No CCTV. No leads. 3 months later, a boy named Mateo was found in a town hours away. Alone. His head was shaved. His eyes blank. He didn't speak for weeks. Until one night, he whispered, "The van took us somewhere." And then he said, "It's coming back."
What stays with me is the thought of those children in their final moments inside the van. The sense of fear must have been overwhelming, enough to leave marks on the glass, desperate for help. Mateo's survival adds another layer of horror. His blank stare, his silence, and the cryptic words he finally spoke. It feels less like a rescue and more like a message from somewhere we don't understand. The missing van left behind only questions and fear. The next legend leaves behind something even harder to explain: exam backrooms. First reports describe a classroom identical to an ordinary school, except for one detail. The test papers are written in an unreadable script. The only recognizable phrase is the title, 𝗵cie 𝗁𝗁𝗃. Entry into this room is considered irreversible unless the rules are followed precisely. Time to watch closely.
You ever sit down for an exam and the paper is written in a language you cannot recognize, except for the title at the top, 𝗵cie 𝗁𝗁𝗃, you are not in your world anymore. Forget the exam, you failed it. Follow these rules. 1. Do not try to escape the classroom. Trust me, you do not want to attract all the attention. The hallway loops either way, this place will lead you back here. 2. Do not try to talk to anyone in the room. It's an exam, have some manners. Besides, they are not human, and they might start to realize that you are. 3. If your pen starts moving on its own, do not interrupt it. Let it finish. Whatever it writes is your next step, even if it makes no sense. Especially if it makes no sense.
The anomaly of the self-writing pen is particularly disturbing. Witnesses describe instructions appearing on the page in real time, compelling them to act. Refusal reportedly results in immediate disappearance. Combined with reports of students turning hostile when approached, the room appears less like an exam hall and more like a containment site. The next, in 2009, a teenage girl came home from school and locked herself in her room. Like any other night, she brushed off her mom's voice telling her to leave the door open. An hour later, she heard her mother again, louder, angrier, calling her for dinner. But the sound that followed wasn't footsteps, it was a dinner plate smashing on the hallway floor. Here's the chilling clip.
In 2009, a teenage girl returns home from school and heads straight to her room, quietly closing the door behind her to discuss date plans with her boyfriend over the phone. Before long, a knock interrupts her. "Remember to keep the door open," her mother calls from the other side. Annoyed, she rolls her eyes and mutters, "Whatever," before stomping over and swinging it open. An hour later, her mother calls from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready. Still irritated, the girl brushes off the request and opens her laptop to watch a show on Netflix. As the familiar theme song plays, she leans back in her chair and tries to relax. Suddenly, a dinner plate is hurled from the kitchen, crashing onto the hallway floor. The sharp sound jolts the girl as her mother's voice calls out again, this time unnaturally loud and twisted. "I said dinner is ready." The girl pauses, glancing down the hallway.
"Mom?"
She calls out, her voice trembling. No answer. Hesitating, she walks down the hall, her heart racing with each step. As she enters the kitchen, everything seems normal, except for a note left on the counter. She steps closer, and her stomach drops as she reads, "Hey sweetie, I got called in for a night shift and won't be home until tomorrow. Call me if you need anything. Love, Mom."
The anomaly centers on auditory mimicry. Witness reported hearing a familiar voice with increasing intensity, culminating in a sound event, plate shattering. The discovery of the note established that the source of the voice was not human. Such mimic phenomena are frequently associated with intrusion legends and predatory entities. That's why these rules exist. Break them, and you might end up facing something far worse than detention. Schools hide more stories than we'll ever know, and some of them should never be tested. If you want more disturbing tales like this, hit like, share with a friend, and follow for the next story. Until then, don't stay after class.